Okay, welcome to the first episode of Gigi and RiRi. I am RiRi and this is Gigi, and we are going to be talking to you about all things mental health.
Correct.
So get comfortable, put on your headphones or blast the speakers, and let's get ready.
Let's do it.
Yes. So today's topic is about your authentic self.
Yes.
And this is something that we see quite often in many different areas of people's lives where people are not living for their true authentic self.
Yeah. It's very hard to, I think, today really understand what it means to live authentically. There are so many influences, right? And we are continually traumatized by everything that we see. And holding on, right? Because being authentic, at least to me, really means living your true self, but you have to know your true self. And that's typically where we miss the mark. Many of us don't really have a great understanding of who the heck we are to begin with. That's why we can't, live that, what I call congruent life. It's a difference between who you are or who you live like or how you live versus who you really are. Is it congruent or is it discongruent?
Right. And for the sake of understanding, what are some examples that you see of people not living congruently with what they're doing and who they are?
Well, if you definitely want to if you want to do something for yourself, but you put your needs on the back burner to satisfy someone else. Say you want to move, you're a young adult and you want to move out, right? But you are going to stay because you need to be there to support and help with the bills, right? It's fine to do that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but a prolonged state can interrupt your progress to authentic self, right? The other part is another example can be people who they've often talked about this who struggle with their own sexual identity or orientation and living the way that they are expected to live versus who they really believe they are is a way of living an incongruent life. But things that are more innocuous that you can't see is when you are living in a place where you're holding your breath and you're stifled. Like, this is just not how, I'm doing it because I either want to keep something going, I'm afraid to lose something, but this is not really what I want to do, but I'm afraid to take the next step.
So this is where a lot of that disconnect seems to come in when I see people who are doing things where it's iffy and you can tell it's iffy, but they're not acting like it's iffy. It's like perfect example. I was in a car service one day and they had radio on, and I'm listening to someone telling this story about it was a call or somebody called in, and she said that there was a guy, they were talking about relationships, and there was a guy that she was seeing, and he told her that he wanted her to go to orgies with him. And at first she was like, what? And then he goes, well, one woman just doesn't satisfy me. And then she agreed and she did it. And then they ended up breaking up. And the radio host asked her, now that you're no longer with him, would you do this on your own? And her response was literally the way her voice, the intonation and everything. I don't know. And it's like, okay, clearly that was not on your bucket list.
Right.
So for you to be able to say you did this and you still don't know if you would do it for you, is you're saying this was not something you would want to do.
No, correct. Absolutely. Because true authenticity means that you're going to stand on what you want. You're going to stand on it regardless of the risk or the loss. And if she would really have to ask herself, is that really what I want to do? Not just please him. Because you can desire to please your mate, But you really have to determine, is it at that risk? That is that what I really want to do? Is that the way I want to please the
Mm-hmm.
person?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to live with that outcome,
Right.
right? So she's gonna have to live with being in an orgy and what that meant. And if she wasn't really with it, but did it for him and then didn't get him or keep him in the end, yeah, that's a problem,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So and sometimes you don't have time to think through. We want to think through stuff. We have time. We want time. We feel like we have to make a snap decision, and that's how we wind up getting into these spaces where we're just not living our true self.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to give ourselves permission to live our true selves. Sometimes, yes, we might be entertaining taking on an action like that, but it's not something that's a snap decision. We may need to sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if our
Mm-hmm.
partner is unwilling to hear us or work with us, then you have to decide whether or not this is the partner you need to be talking to or being with.
Exactly, exactly. As much as you're willing to step out of your comfort zone and acquiesce to what they want, what are they willing to acquiesce for you?
Correct.
And if it's like, this is what I want, or else, then you're not worth acquiescing. And that's something to
Correct.
consider. And that's another question about your true authentic self. Are you somebody who wants someone to care for you the way you care for them? Or are you someone who it doesn't matter what they think about you, how they treat you, you just want that to have a person to be able to say, yes, I have a man, I have a woman.
Correct.
Which one is it? And you have to decide who you are.
But I think the problem is that we go into situations not asking those questions up front.
Yep.
Right. So we are confronted with the question at the moment we need to do the action.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to decide up front, like those questions today at least are, maybe before it wasn't easy to ask those questions, but today it is. Like, who are you, how you move, what you
Right.
want.
Right.
Because I need to know. I don't want any surprises, because every, you know, everything to me has the opportunity to set up for manipulation and gaslighting. So once somebody gets into a relationship and they're in, you know what I mean, they're in it. Sometimes this is when these requests gets leveraged,
Mm-hmm.
because that's when it's harder to say no.
Right.
So you have to be really clear that, at every interval, I'm going to say yes or no to it, right? So, and you have to really be clear about those things, right?
Right.
For me, there's certain no-goes for me.
Right.
But
right.
that doesn't mean that there aren't workarounds my partner can figure out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I may have been blindsided by those things, right? So for me, for instance, I'm not going to tolerate any kind of threatening behavior or anything else like that. Absolutely.
Right.
But I was far more tolerant with acts of emotional manipulation that I wasn't as keen on,
Mm-hmm.
but created the same feelings over time. The same feelings of, feeling like you're shut down, feeling like you're exhausted, feeling like you're tired, feeling like you're helpless, and just not understanding that putting yourself first is work. You have to decide, and then you have to be committed to it. And it takes time. And sometimes it just really takes time for you to figure out who it is that you are and what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you even if you figure it out in the moment, stand by it, trust it. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen, but at the end of the day, you'll feel a lot better about sticking to who you are and being true to you than you will be serving somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And but another thing that we need to think about is what is the push to acquiesce to something that we wouldn't normally have on our own list of things that we want for ourselves. Is it truly the societal influence from millennia ago where a woman has to have a man in order to survive, in order to be considered worth anything?
Mm-hmm.
Are we still doing that where we're willing to sacrifice ourselves just to say that I have a man, I'm in a relationship, or, and think same could be for the opposite, I have a woman or I have a partner, whatever, that you're not worthy if there's not someone that you can show off as being somehow connected to.
No, I think all those things apply. I think It depends on how we define ourselves, like what matters to us. This is what this, quest for self on this authenticity is about. It's like, how do you define you, right? And how do you want the world to define you? And does it matter if the world defines you, right? I've always said people who are more successful are less consumed with how the world defines them, but they're willing to go against the world, right? They understand that the world can validate them, but they're willing to take the risk anyway, right? But they're not going to allow the world to dictate who they are, right? To the point where they question who they are, right? And question their validity of who they are, their beauty, their intelligence, what they bring to the table. All these things are, what influences can do. But what it influences also do is that it kind of, you may not think that, you may have had a particular idea of like, you know what, I'd rather wait until maybe the third date or wait till I'm married to be with someone intimately. At least I'll know if there's a commitment in there. But if your social network is like, yo, everybody is saying no, this is just not the way it is. This is today. You need to move forward. You can't expect somebody to wait. You can't do this. That's where it becomes problematic because you have to decide that you're going to take the, ribbing from your social network, being able to withstand that and stand. And that's why you always have to go back. One thing I've always said is really laying out, sometimes journaling, whatever it takes to just keep reminding yourself and ask yourself, who am I and what matters to me? So that you're not rocked or, when you are challenged, that you don't waver, because it's easy to get into a situation where you kind of second guess what you've put before you, right? And redefine yourself in a moment, because that's what's being called for, especially if you like someone. And you can't help what the heart likes. The heart can't help the heart. The heart will like whomever. And if you really want this person and you really want to, you see, we always look in the future. We're always thinking about who we are, can be, will be, who they will be, all these wonderful things. And we need to stay present to the moment and decide whether or not this is going to work for me in the moment. Forget what's going to happen in the future. Because today is going to tell you, it's going to influence the future. So it's hard to do that. But talking about it, especially with people like, we talk, especially people that's going to remind you and support you. Have those kind of people in your ear that constantly reminds you about who you are. I don't know if anyone, I'm sure listeners have seen Divorce in the Black. There was one key point to it, that the father had shown her videos of who she was. And she's like, why are you doing this? And he said, because I need you to remember who you are. I need you to remember that, because that was taken from you. Not because you just gave it up. But a lot of times we're not paying attention. You'd be surprised how you are chipped away at little by little to a point of not being recognized. You don't recognize yourself, not recognizable to other people. So you really have to have people in your ear, in your corner, that's going to constantly remind you, this is who I am.
Right.
So that you don't give up your power.
But now here's another twist on that scenario. When you have people in your corner that are really there to eat popcorn and sip tea, yes, I've seen it. I've seen it happen where they are there to try and get you to do things that they think you should do. And, this is my girl. She's like a second mother to me. And they're telling you to do things that that are just way out of your league, that you should not be doing, that is not you, that you can't keep up with, telling you to get into circles that you are not built for.
Right.
And now you're fighting to keep up this thing that they've created for you, because these are your trusted people. These are the people that you've fallen in with. At what point do we have to realize that even it's not just an intimate relationship, a love relationship, or what, a physical relationship? This is work, this is family, this is friends, where these people can be. How do we start to take the blinders off and see this is not someone that is truly keeping my best interest in the forefront here.
One is really accepting that there can be people in your corner, in your court like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's always the possibility that there's someone in your court like that, and never, you know, deny the possibility of that. The other part of it is listen critically and listen intuitively. You know, your body will tell you, you'll hear that voice that says, this is not what you need to do. And if you don't want to do it, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes even practicing on your own, like screaming, no, I'm not going to, something that helps you. Because in the moment, you may find, especially if codependency is a learned behavior, and you have to be aware of just the way that you interact with people. Sometimes we develop codependent behavior out of survival, right? So if this is your network and you feel present, you feel relevant, you feel loved, you feel connected, you can develop these codependent
Right.
ways of operating with them, especially if some are displaying narcissistic tendencies, right? You can do that. And you can go along with the program because it's the easier thing to do.
Right.
Like
Right.
standing in your no or standing in your power, doing something different is typically never popular, right?
Right.
But if it's important for you to be, it depends on what's more important in the moment. So if it's important to be you connected, yeah, you'll wind up acquiescing, though your gut will tell you that was not what you were supposed to do, right? The other thing is forgive yourself in the moment. But even if you make that step and it's just not the best step for you in the moment, you can always change.
Right.
You don't have to keep doing it
Right.
over and over again. All right, I took the step. I went to the orgy, right? I did it. Yo, that's not for me. I'm not doing it again.
Right.
I'm going to go back and figure out this is why I did it, right? This would be my recommendation to her. Forgive yourself, keep it moving and go. You know, next time somebody step to me about this, it's no. I'm clear about that.
Right.
If I have to say it up front before I catch feelings, let me say it up front.
Right.
This is not what I do.
This is where my lines are drawn.
Right. This is what I don't do this, right?
Yes. I've had a couple of no, I don't do these.
I don't do that. All right. We don't do that. Like I've said, when I was getting married, I was like, look, we don't do that. You don't ever think you can put your hand on me. It will be a problem for you. So, and that's why, you know, because my husband came from an abusive background. So for me, it was very clear, look, I get the correlation thing going on. So let me explain to you about how, in terms of communicating, this is not what we're doing. This is not what we do in our household. So if you make the mistake of thinking this is going to happen, let it be your first and last try, because you won't have a second one.
Right.
So and I'm not saying it arrogantly. I was very clear that I was just not. I had worked with women in battered domestic violence situations, and I just was clear that that's just something I don't want to experience and live with. So let me stop it from the beginning. And that's what we also need to be clear about. When it comes to being authentic, sometimes you have to remove yourself from a situation.
Yep.
Or not expose yourself to a situation, right? Because sometimes you think, I got this, I'm just going to go. And when you get there, you get enticed, tempted, and you don't have the boundaries intact to stay true to yourself. Sometimes you have to go, nope, I'm not going. I'm not even going to put myself in a position because I'm not quite sure where I feel or how I feel about this. And, you know, and don't do it, right? Because that's self-protection, that's honoring you, because that's part of authenticity, is honoring who you are. But again, sometimes it takes time to figure out what no one actually 100% has that figured out, but you do have a sense of what you don't want to do. So start there.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I think everybody should start to do, is do some self-inventory. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, these are things that I want for me. Would the little girl that used to say, I want to be this and I want to have this, look at you today and say the things that you're doing are okay with her? And if they are, you're on track. If they're not, you have some things you need to go back and reconcile.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Visualizing that little girl talking to you helps because that inner child, that inner young girl is going to talk straight.
Yes.
Is going to talk
Yes.
straight.
Yes.
And it's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to take care of yourself that way.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's lonely. So I don't want to make any, mislead anyone. Sometimes it can be lonely, isolating, frustrating, disappointing, sad. But at the end, it's worth it.
Yes. Yes. And I think once you are comfortable with yourself, that sadness, that fear, that loneliness goes away.
Yep.
And then you know what happiness from within feels like. And then if you choose to seek companionship,
Right.
it comes a lot easier.
Right.
And I think that first thing that everyone should do is just do some self-inventory.
Correct. And it's okay to delay gratification. It is so worth it.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I think society accelerates is that you have to make these choices and decisions right now. But no.
Yep.
Delay gratification so that it's more meaningful and that you have greater insight into what is important, right?
Right.
Sometimes we can make one decision that is catastrophic for the rest of our lives. That changes the trajectory of our lives. Just one decision, one bad relationship, one, interaction. So the thing that's why it's really important that you're very clear, because even if you make a decision that doesn't have the best outcome, if you're true to yourself and you're authentic, you can move through it a lot faster. You can forgive yourself a lot easier because you're like, look, I wanted to do it. I'm standing on truth. And, it didn't work. Right. So I'm going to keep it moving.
Right.
So,
I can check it off my bucket list and on to the next now.
Absolutely.
Question.
Sure.
So in terms of someone trying to get you to operate outside of your true authentic self, what is the strangest thing you've seen?
The strangest thing I've seen?
Yes.
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank for a moment.
I'll give you an example.
Sure.
So there was a male friend, a person that I thought was a friend, and I had mentioned, and just a platonic friend, not a physical thing at all, and throughout our conversations, it had come up that I'm not a drinker, right? I don't drink, maybe a New Year's Eve toast or, I go to a wedding and cheers to the happy couple or whatever. But other than that, no. And I'm definitely not drinking my home by myself kind of person. And then as soon as I said I don't drink, this person goes, yeah, I don't drink either. I was like, okay. And then a couple of conversations later, they get home after work. Yeah, I need a drink. I thought you don't drink. I don't, but I am tonight. And then a couple conversations later, you need to unwind and relax. I was like, do I? Do I really? Why do I need to unwind? Well, you don't, everybody needs to unwind. Everybody has stress. Do you have something like some wine in your house? I was like, I'm not a drinker. Yeah, but it's okay to just have a glass of wine and unwind. Just go ahead and get a drink. I was like, I don't drink. I don't drink on any given Wednesday evening. I just don't.
Right.
And I'm not going to drink alone. But why not just relax? Have an evening where you relax and unwind. It got to the point just to get this person off the phone. I was like, yeah, okay, I got some wine right here. Okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah, you too. All right, bye. It was what the heck? What the heck is happening here? This person really wants me to go against what I'm blatantly telling you I do not do.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that some people would fall for.
No, it's very powerful. We are all susceptible to it. And you have to be keenly on guard not to have that happen. When you were talking, it reminded me of a situation I had when I was much younger. I was I'm going to venture to say I was probably in my early 20s. And I grew up, we're talking about late to mid 80s. So there were a lot of drugs around my neighborhood. Just everybody was either selling or taking
Right.
them. Right. So because, there were drugs in my family, I did not like what drugs did to people. I didn't like the way they communicated. I didn't like, the change of personality in the moment. So what was very clear to me, I guess I was a control freak. It's like, I'm not taking anything because I'm not going to leave myself vulnerable or whatever. I want to be able to make decisions. So, but I hung out with these people. These are my people, cared for them. Some
Right.
of them were 5 years older than me, between 3 and 5, and some were my age. So I was at a gathering, and guy who's handsome guy, and I guess he always knew he was handsome, right?
Right.
And
Right.
he comes to me. We're all sitting there gathering. I don't drink and I don't get high, right? So they have Coke, they have marijuana, they have everything.
Right.
So he said, take a hit of Coke. I said, no, I don't do that, right? And especially with Coke, because my mom always said, don't take Coke, don't ever use cocaine because you have allergies and you'll die the first time you take it. So I always believe my mother anyway. So I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. So he was like, no, I'm saying take it. And he was pressing me, right? And his demeanor changed because it went from, being warm and congenial to really being kind of, yo, take this. I'm telling you what to do. And I felt, now there were other adults in the room. There were other people in the room watching this encounter. And
Right.
I'm feeling like really pressured
Right.
in the
Right.
moment. And there was a point where I wasn't quite sure. I wanted to get him off my back. So I wasn't quite sure how to do that, whether it was to walk out, leave. I was going back and forth in my head, or do I just take it and just move? Like the thought came to mind, just because he's forcing, he's in your face with it in your face, and he's forcing. And he's being, really aggressive about it. So now you feel powerless. He's taking what I wasn't recognizing, that he's diminishing my power in the moment. His brother, who's my age, jumped up and said, leave her alone. And he jumped on his brother, stay out of this. I know what I'm doing. I'm telling her what to do. She want to hang out here. She need to do this. And he says, I said, leave her alone. And he turned to me and he said, get out and don't you ever come back.
The younger brother?
The younger brother. And I left. And they actually had a fight. It escalated to a fight.
Wow.
Where the police came and everything else. But he stood up. Because his brother got high. But his brother was like, no, we were classmates. He was like, but when he turned to me, he screamed at me. It snapped me out of whatever his brother had just done.
Right.
And he said, get out and don't you ever come back. And I didn't. Right. And I never spoke to the brother again, though I saw him. Right. Because the brother was all angry with me at that point and was angry with his younger brother.
Right.
But this is why I said being around people who know you. He knew, God, they're both deceased now, but David, God rest his soul, he knew that that's not who Gigi is, and you're not going to force her. And he was clear. This is what I mean, maintaining your authentic self. He's like, get out and don't come back. You can't be in these rooms, boo. These are not for you. I don't care how cool you with people, how many call you your little sister. This is not for you. Though, because his brother and my brother used to get high together. So none of this matters. It doesn't matter that I get high. You don't come back.
Right.
And from that day forward, I practiced that. I never went back into rooms that would not that I was tempted by it, but I would be put in this position where someone would try to bully me into doing something. And then if they did, that I was ready to fight. Because that's what the issue was, not that I was succumbing to take it. I was afraid to fight. Because I knew this man was going to hit me. Like I was afraid.
Right.
This is how he was gearing up. So this is the thing that you have to be mindful of, is that you can have the right mindset going into a space, but there are people in there just like you raised that are not your friend, that don't have your best interests at heart, and that are laying for you. They've studied you, they've watched you, they know how you operate. And that was very true of that day, because it's not like he didn't watch and know me. He knew raising up would diminish my power. And that's the thing you have to be mindful of. The
Mhm.
minute you feel it, don't wait to fight it
Right.
unless you're ready to fight.
Right.
But
right.
exit. You know, you
Right.
can always just pack yourself and go, look, I got to go. I'm out.
That's right. That's right. And thank you for David for existing.
Yes. Thank you for David.
Yes.
God rest his soul. And his brother, you know, died by, you know, he lived by the sword. So he died by the sword.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, definitely. It's those are the things where we have to take note.
Yep.
We have to take note. And so this is going to bring us to Psych 101.
Yep.
Let's talk about what emotional intelligence is.
Oh my goodness. It's really having a sense of, you know, I think the best way for the audience to understand is for me to explain it from my experience. So I remember being asked a question when I was preparing to get married. They said, well, how does your fiance make you feel? And I said, well, he's a good guy and he really tries to make, they said, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, how does he make you feel? Well, you know, we talk and we communicate and we get things. How does he make you feel? Mad, sad, glad, happy? And it was for the first time I went, huh? I didn't realize that I had in my survival, like through the challenges that I came up with in my life, I kind of just, you know, you move through things. You know, we're strong, we're built strong, we're resilient. You move through things. I didn't realize that I had not identified how to identify my feelings.
Okay.
Like
okay.
give them names,
Right.
say, I feel. So I was always very susceptible to attacks, abuse, or anything. I might have had a heightened sense of flight, right, or fight, but I couldn't identify when I was sad, disappointed, discouraged, right? I couldn't identify those things. So really, having emotional intelligence is essential to be able to, you know, to live an authentic self. You have to be connected. You have to understand what it is you're feeling, what makes you feel a particular way, and why and why things are important to you.
Right.
It's really about value identification and value analysis and understanding, because there's two ways for you to develop values. There's things that you adopt as values, right? And then you can value what someone else values. And you can have introjected values. These are values that really aren't yours, but because somebody else value them, you take them on, right? So that might have been what happened with the young woman, you know, going to the orgy. That wasn't her value, but because he did, it was introjected, so she accepted it, right? To make it her own. And if she continued in that relationship, she may have had many more of those experiences, but at the core of who she is, maybe that's never something she wanted to do, right? You think it's really about pleasing, being with, you know, we can put ourselves in that position to really please and be with someone. If you think about even the whole R. Kelly trial, when these women talked about it, they talked about being groomed to be in here, right? And that in order to please him, and it's more than just pleasing him. He can create a process, or she can create a process, an illusion that makes it seem like what we're doing is normal, and that you're the problem because you're not into this. Right. There's something wrong with you. So having a degree in developing emotional intelligence is essential to really being able to understand what it means to be authentically you.
Yes. And in my experience, it's like, for some reason, ever since I was a small child in the single digit numbers, I've always picked up on personality quirks. And it just, you know, I have the Spock eyebrow for it. It's like someone would do something. I'm like, okay. And I remember being like 9 years old and picking up on stuff like this. So when it comes to later on in life, it's my spidey senses are tingling.
Correct.
Like from day one. And it seems like for me, emotional intelligence really is your true intelligence. It's like I've seen people who can take in facts,
Right.
remember them, and regurgitate them.
Right.
People, they become good test takers, but that's a skill in comparison to being able to know who you really are and what you're really feeling and what you're really doing. That to me is where true intelligence lies. And I say that because I've seen people who are book smart do things that are so outrageously unsmart. And it's all based on their emotions or lack thereof. And it's so blatantly unsmart. How do you not see that?
Right.
So it's,
There's a lot that happens in between why folks don't see it. Because no, what you're talking about is true intuition. And the way to get and having emotional intelligence really can sharpen your intuitive skills, right?
Well, not on my side, but on the side of the other person.
No.
Like there are people that I know that do things that are outrageous, but they know the things that they're doing are outrageous.
But there's a reason for it. There's a gain. There's always a primary, secondary gain for it.
Right. But take this into consideration. The person who's like, yes, I know I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Yes, that wasn't a nice thing to do. It wasn't nice for me to call her this or, take his whatever. It wasn't nice. I know. Then you have the other person, the book smart person, who's like, I didn't do that. It's like, bro, you're on camera and you're doing it. It's like, but that wasn't me. But bro, I'm playing the video back for you. But you just hate me. You're such a hater.
That's a gaslighter.
And lack of emotional intelligence. Where is your emotional intelligence?
It depends on how they're using it. People who, in my opinion, are gaslighters really are keenly aware of other people's emotional or lack thereof intelligence because they use tactics to really manipulate.
Yes, they can pick up on those personality traits.
Right.
This person has low self-esteem. Right. This person feels that they are less attractive than other people. This person, is very unsure of their decision making.
Right.
So yes,
this person likes to be helpful. They want to give. So I'm going to be a person in need.
Right. Or this person needs someone to take care of them.
Right.
So they're a helpless person,
right.
and I'm going to be, the savior. I'm going to be the person who comes in and saves the day. But there are people who can actively say, yes, I'm pretending to be the savior. And then there are people who are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. How could you say that about me? How dare you? And it's like they really can't catch on. And it's like,
I don't know if I agree. I think people deflect. I think people don't want to take, when you don't want to take ownership or responsibility for something, you're going to deflect.
You can, I think there's a certain level of deflection, but when you dig your hole deeper, you're showing that you're not so smart.
No, absolutely. You're correct. You will definitely play your hand. You play your
And there are people who can build on those things in a way where they're smart enough to possibly get out of it. But some people just digging and digging and digging. And it's like, whoa. It's like, wow, a 3-year-old could lie better than you can.
Correct. I mean, no, I see your point. I just think that, it's convoluted and it's complicated. But the way that I think the best way to sift through it is that understanding that everyone has intuition. It's not that they don't. It's how much you allow it to evolve, right? You can deactivate it completely, or you can listen to it, right? You can act on it immediately, or you can listen to it quietly. You can table and just wait for more information. But that's really about taking the opportunity. But there's something that interferes with that emotional intelligence. You have to allow yourself to be in a space, right? So if you're dealing with a lot of unresolved issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be very difficult for you to increase your emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that interfere with that, if you're bogged down with, shame, fear, these things interfere with your ability to have true emotional intelligence.
Feelings of inadequacy.
Feelings of inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
These things interfere with that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to resolve those things, right? To be able to increase your emotional intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in either you're being critical and judgmental of yourself because you're not meeting some expectation, right? Or you believe people are saying things about you, and that it's heavy to carry
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're carrying. But anyway, if you're measuring yourself against whatever,
Right.
and you are carrying shame, guilt, inadequacies, right? Fear, ambivalence, all these things will keep you from being less emotionally intelligent. You have to move towards peace. You have to move toward gratitude. You have to move towards just self-love and self-validation to be able to sharpen that, your own individual intellect with regard to your own emotion. That moves you toward, true intuition,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And understanding, having more joy. That's why I say removing yourself from things. If you're in a situation where you're unhappy or discontented most of the time, you're not going to be able to be emotionally intelligent because those things will be blocks for you. You have to move out of those spaces. And sometimes it means moving. If it's a relationship that just keeps you in that space, you may have to really think through, should I stay here? And sometimes it's as simple as moving yourself out of the space for a period of time. You have to give yourself distance for you to gain clarity, and that will increase your emotional intelligence.
Okay. Yeah, I think for some people it's a lot harder.
Oh no, let me tell you, it is one of the most difficult things. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. It's doable. It is absolutely achievable. But is it challenging? Yes.
Yes.
And the longer you stay in situations,
the harder it is. Yes.
The harder it is. That is why anytime we take risks, right? So you go gambling, you decide I'm only going to spend $20, in the slot machines, and you wind up spending $100. But the thing is that at some point you're like, I got to get up from this chair. I got to get from this table.
Right.
You have to be able to balance that. Same thing with relationships. I don't think we think about relationships or emotions or connections with people. Sometimes you got to really weigh how much exposure you give to people, how much exposure you allow. How much of my energy am I going to spend here? Because if you stay too long, you are going to lose connection to self. You're going to lose your intellect, or it's going to be stifled, stymied. It's going to be blunted. You're not going to be able to really be able to discern things, because emotional intelligence helps you to discern things, right? And faster, more accurately, more intuitively. It just helps you to do that. So
going
those
back
things
to
are
that, being able to say, no, this is not for me.
No,
immediately,
this is not for me.
Instead of having to wait and falter and possibly make the wrong choice.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, yo, you should have told me, you this whole thing about you don't know if you're satisfied by one. You should have told me that up front. Right. So if this is where you're at, I need a minute if you don't want to say, or you know what, then we need to maybe part right now, because that's not where I'm at. That's not where I'm not saying I may or may not ever try. Who knows what I'm beginning? But today I'm not doing it. Tomorrow I'm not doing it. And I feel pressure to make that decision.
Right.
So if this is where you're at with it, either you have to make a choice whether or not you're willing to lose me, right? You're willing to wait for me. You have a choice too. I don't just have a choice. You do.
Exactly.
You can go back and forth if you want to, but you're asking me to do something that's out my comfort zone, right?
And emotional intelligence will help you get through that.
Yep.
And it will help you see the level of emotional intelligence of the person that you're dealing with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't, and yeah, believe what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Believe what you experience.
Which is going to be one of our other topics.
Yes.
Open your eyes and look at what is happening right in front of you.
Believe what you see. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Well, Gigi,
RiRi.
this has been a great first episode.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone out there, for listening. We hope you come back again. And this is Gigi and RiRi signing off.
Have a good day. Bye.